damn, there's your beautiful face on my show. That's all I really wanted. I just wanted the sex appeal thing. People are now scrolling down their wall and they're just going to click on the daggone stream because they're going to be like, who's that hunk of man right there? So,
oh Lord,
yada yada yada, whatever you say, just keep doing what you're doing right now, and my numbers are going up right now. It just went from 16 to 18 just since your face appeared.
Well, I just got me a fresh LaCroix, so.
Delay. What does delay mean to you? When do you use it often? Do you use it all the time? Do you use it very purposefully, or what are some of your thoughts on delay? I'll just let you ramble for a second.
Well, I don't use delay all the time. With more folk styles, I rarely use delay. Sometimes if it's a folk style that's got some kind of blues edge or maybe a little old school rock and roll kind of sound to it at all, I'll use like a slap delay, usually at about 112, a real quick delay. But really,
now 112, that's milliseconds. Is that how audible is that? Is that just like a slap?
That's like the Elvis. It's like the Elvis delay.
Uh-huh.
It's like the old tape delay, quick. But so I use that a lot. Obviously I use all plugins these days, but I use the Soundtoys. Echo Boy is a really wonderful tool.
I used to have that one.
Some of those tape delays on there are really great. The cheap tape is one I use a lot. And then I use the Memory Man, which is like a guitar pedal delay, but that one's got a really soft. I use delays a lot of times more often than reverb if I'm doing like more kind of pop or rock type, anything, and particularly if it's a thicker kind of mix. But
because it creates the space without washing things out or muddying it up too much.
Yeah. So one of the things I try to do is, because most of the stuff I work on these days is to some degree to a click track or some sort of a fixed tempo. And so I usually try to set my delays within that somehow. It can be triplets or, dotted or whatever, but it'll be within the time because
on the grid.
I don't necessarily want to hear a delay that's sort of out of time.
Right.
There's a time and place for that.
They have to be very intentional.
Yeah. Right. Or very analog.
Right.
So,
it's slightly out of time, but it's cool as shit.
I'll tell you what I've been doing a lot.
It's making me love how out of time it is. It's so cool.
Exactly. What I've been doing a lot lately with delays is I really love the Soundtoys stuff with delays. They've really got the best. That Primal Tap is great, and the Echo Boy is great. But I'll take the Primal Tap, which is kind of like the Daniel Lanois delay. It's like that sort of late 70s, early 80s digital delay thing, and I'll put it into ping pong, so that it's it'll hit over here and then hit over here, and go back and forth. And then I'll take their the Altar Boy effect that they have, which is this weird kind of where you can change the pitch and the formant of something with it. It's a really weird effect that I love.
What's the formant again?
The formant is like the wow, that kind of a thing. And so I won't mess with those a lot of times, but it has this drive effect on it that I'll just turn all the way to the right. And then I'll put that after the delay, so you get this kind of edgy kind of thing. And then I'll go in and I'll take the Fab Filter. I can't remember what it is, but it's one of the Fab Filter plugins that it has this little. It's like a high pass and a low pass that you can really narrow down to like a single band. And I'll go around and I'll find this place, and I'll put that last, and I'll find this place where the delays now don't have any bottom end and don't have any top end. They just have like kind of mid-range.
Right.
And I'll move around and find where it sits in the song. And so I'll use that a lot in place of reverbs. A lot.
So how many delays was that when all was said and done?
Well, that's just one delay, like the Primal Tap.
But you weren't.
and then
Oh, so you were just talking about different instances and different purposes, not like you would do all those to one track.
yeah, to one track. So like I'm setting up a delay in an auxiliary,
Right.
and I'm sending things to it. And so like I've got the primal tap going, and then I put like the altar boy with the weird kind of
Oh,
overdrive.
so you're using them as sends.
Yeah. Well, I'm putting that after the delay, so that's now affecting the delay.
Oh.
And then I'm putting the fab filter kind of mid-range thing, peak
Oh,
thing.
that's just an EQ, the fab filter.
Exactly, and I'm
Gotcha.
sliding that around.
Right.
And so those are all on that aux channel after the delay. So
Gotcha.
you're basically affecting the delay after it
Sweet.
happened.
Okay,
So
that's cool.
that's something I've been getting into. And so you're able
So
to really
when you create that, sorry to cut you off there.
No,
but
no, good.
When you create the aux send, is that because you want to send more than one thing to the same delay?
sometimes, but
I mean, I know the reasons for not putting it on the track itself, but I was wondering if it was also because you reuse that same setting on different instruments, or
yeah, sometimes that's the case. And also, I just kind of like to keep my track. If it's a vocal, I like to keep it kind of clean.
mm-hmm.
And not to say that I'm not putting things all over that track, but I really just kind of want to have my effects over here to the side that I can sort of blend to taste,
Right.
and not necessarily using the mix knob. For some reason, I like to put an effect over on an aux channel and crank it all the way up, crank the mix knob all the way up.
Yeah, yeah.
Just have it full blast.
Right. Yeah, of course.
It feels like you can get
Then
more
you blend
space.
it in with the send.
And also, it's like if I put a delay, like a stereo effect on the track, I don't really want it sitting after my compressor on that track. For some reason, it's just the way my ears work. And I don't want it in front, because then it makes that compressor have to be a stereo, so it's eating up that much more.
Right.
So if you've got it over on its own thing, then it allows your kind of mono channel to kind of stay pure.
So once you do that, like, how do you know where to set the delay in the mix? Do you want to hear it?
Sometimes not.
So what role is it if you mix it to a place where you've gone through all that work to create that channel, and then you mix it so far down that you can't hear it? What's it doing in the track?
Well, it's creating some space. It's creating a stereo space.
Because we can actually hear it a little bit or something?
Right. Yeah.
Even though you can't pick it out, it's still a reflection of what came before, so it creates, like we're talking
It's one of those things. It's like you can't tell it's there, but you take it away and you can tell it's gone.
Right.
And there's those kinds of things are very powerful in a mix to me.
And is the times that you do want to hear it, is that just taste, or are there any rules about that?
God, no rules. But sometimes, like say in the first verse or whatever, I don't really want to hear that delay. So I go and I turn the volume down, and then I automate it up when I want to hear it.
Right.
And I'll work the delay. And there's another reason why it's good to have it on an aux send, because you've got that channel over there and you can automate it.
Right.
As
so you
it
can
goes
really
along.
swell the delay up for a second and bring it all the way out.
Whereas if you have it as a plug-in on the channel, you got to go in there and mess with all that crap, and then you're kind of creating a bit of a can of worms.
Right.
But it's kind of one of those things where anymore with effects like reverbs and things, I tend to like to darken them. I like to take a lot of the top end sizzle out of them, because it gives them more depth, and it kind of fattens the track. It gives you more meat on your track. It's where if you have all that treble going, you get all this sizzle and stuff.
Right.
And it's kind of like you find yourself always kind of fighting against that.
And then the delay is more like a shadow than like a sparkle or something. Yeah.
One of the things, something I'm getting into more and more, and you and I cut our teeth in the analog realm. And
aren't you grateful for that?
mm-hmm.
That's one thing I like about being the age I am, was being able to have experienced all that.
my ears want to hear that stuff still.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm completely, fully, totally digital and love it, I still seek out some of those tones, and it's so easy to get them in the digital world now.
Mm-hmm.
But I use a lot of harmonic distortions. I would say that's really become kind of the secret weapon for me in a great mix is harmonic distortions on everything.
And how do you achieve that? Just by overdriving plugins, or I would think by the word distortion, you must mean something's going beyond where it's supposed to be. It's somewhere in the chain.
Not necessarily. The distortion is just a part of sound. It's in our voices. It's in the gravel in our voice, or it's in when you play even an acoustic guitar. There's some vibration going on, and those are distortions, and they're beautiful distortions. And so, like in analog gear, you run across a piece of tape, and you've got all these harmonic distortions and things that naturally happen, or you run through some tubes and they give distortions, or just wires and circuitry give distortions. So all this analog stuff creates distortions along the way, beautiful distortions, and they fatten the sound. So if you take it away, and if you're getting just a purely digital sound, you're not getting those distortions, and so your sound is essentially a lot thinner because you're not getting all those harmonics to each thing.
So how do you simulate that in a plugin? Just by using them?
I use so many instances, it's unbelievable. But like using like a Neve 1073 plugin going in has beautiful harmonic distortions, or any of the analog channel simulators.
I have the 88 RS.
I want that really badly.
I wonder if I could even appreciate the difference, but
well, if you're using it, you're hearing the beauty of what it does.
I mean, between like that and the 1073.
No, I mean the 1073 is just it's an older sound and just that classic thing, that you heard on so many records. But I use a plug-in. So let's say just like one channel, let's say like a vocal track. At the top in my first slot, I'm using this plugin called the Kazrog True Iron. I got it for, I think, about $10 on sale, and you could probably get it for about $50 now.
Pure iron?
True iron.
True iron.
What it is it simulates, I think, like 6 or 8 different input transformers of different types of old analog gear. And there's one that's
just the input.
Yeah, just the input transformers. And so it's got the Neve 1073, the old Marinair transformer, is one of the selections. And I like to go to that one a lot. There's also one that's like the Western Electric that they used to use for old radio and telephone lines and stuff like that. Just a big-ass transformer. And it imitates it really beautifully and well. It's a great...
Yeah, they're really figuring the emulations out just in the last few years. It seems like finally, like really... someone like you who's used the actual gear for the first time since they started making these emulations, you're like, oh, wait, hold the phone. That's sort of it right there. So 10 years ago, they were making the emulations, but they couldn't compare.
Right. But they are now.
Right. So cool.
And this True Iron is a wonderful plugin. And so the way that I use this is I will put it on the top of every track in my mix.
Are you also using the Apollo Unison with the Neve on it? Mm-hmm. So you're sort of simulating 2 input transformers to a certain extent.
Yeah, a lot of times if I use the Neve to record, I won't use the True Iron Neve setting in my mix. I'll use a different one. Right. So it's like if I was using Neve to track it, I maybe want to mix through an API or something. Right. So I'll take that Kazrog and I'll put it at the top of every channel, and just immediately everything is now like going through a console. Right. Which is cool. And so then I come down and I'll use it like an EQ of some kind. And the way I like to mix, I'll usually use the same EQ on every channel, like a console. Right. And then I'm using a plugin. Do you use knobs or like a parametric, or what kind of EQ do you tend to
ones you draw it in, like scoop it out with a
Knobs.
big, what's that? Knobs. Yeah.
I use the 1073 a lot.
Uh-huh.
There's also a Pultec is great, and Sound Toys makes wonderful plugins, and there's one called the SciQ that I love. And then there's a plugin that I'll put on every track too called the Decapitator. By Sound
See, I
Toys.
used to have those Sound Toys. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, those are wonderful. That Decapitator, the Ampex tape machine setting on that is wonderful, and you can set different flavor. You can set it to taste. But I'll put that on the drums. I'll put it on the bass. I'll put it on the vocals. I'll put it on the acoustic guitar.
Wait, what's the
I'll put it on-
Decapitator again?
It's a harmonic distortion generator.
That's all it is.
That's all it is.
Wow.
And so you can set it to nuke, or you can have it just to where it's like muddies the water a little bit.
Right.
And so with those elements across every track, you start to glue everything together like it's coming from one place.
Right.
And I would say that's a common mistake that people make with digital mixing, is like trying to make everything sound too different.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, if we like that kind of analog world, which I do, you want everything to kind of sound like it's coming from one place.
Right.
Even if you're throwing like a weird effect or something,
Right. Right.
So,
Well, that's pretty inspiring. It is. I want to just open up this mix now and start doing all that stuff.
yeah.
Making them watch me do it.
And then, like on the master bus or whatever, like I'll put a tape machine across the top of it, like Stephen
I
Slade
got the
makes a great
Studer.
one. The Studer.
I got the UAD Studer one.
Yeah, just put that on the master bus. And so they're right there, not including the inputs, just in plugins in my mix, right there is 3 instances of harmonic distortions going across everything that comes through.
Right. Right. No,
You're really,
I'm picking up what you're putting down here.
Yeah, you're really coloring. You're really like smoothing. It's like when you take a picture or whatever on your phone and you start putting filters and messing around with it. You're really gritting it up and making it have that cool thing.
Right. So when you put the Neve plug-in after the first one that was just
the Kazrog.
Right. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that you bypass the input transformer on the Neve to use it just as an EQ, or
I just don't turn up the gain any on it.
that's all you have to do, really? Do you use mic or line?
Well, I'm using the Legacy.
Oh.
I'm using the Legacy when I do that because it's not using a lot of processing.
And it doesn't have mic or line?
It doesn't have that color like the Unison one does.
Right, gotcha.
It's more like just the flavor of the EQ, not so much the sound of the transformer in that one.
So to go back to delay for a second, what relationship does it have with instruments? Do you use it differently? Do you use it on every instrument?
No, not usually.
It's just for blank.
Yeah, you can use different kinds in different ways,
But
One of the
rarely on
great-
drums, say?
Occasionally, like on a room mic for drums, I'll put a real faint delay in time and turn it way down, mix it way down. So it's just very, so if your beat's like doom, doo, doo, ba, doom, doo, doo, ba, maybe if you're just soloed out the room mic, you would hear like doo, 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 ba, ba, doo, 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 ba, ba, doo, doo. But then you pull that way down to taste so that it kind of gives it kind of a room effect.
Right. Like you're playing in an auditorium or something, or a tile room.
Yeah.
Right,
exactly.
right. But it's always about creating space, not necessarily about creating an effect.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're not trying to be Pink Floyd.
Sometimes, but not
you might be
usually.
trying to be Patsy Cline. It's still like a way to use delay. That sort of creates the space, whether it's outer space or a room or someone singing, whatever it is, you're creating a space with it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And you know, one of the great uses for delay is because I mix with a technique called LCR,
What's
which
that?
means it means left, center, right.
Mm.
So everything in my mix is either panned all the way to the left, it's in the center, or it's all the way to the right.
Really?
I very rarely put anything anywhere in between those positions.
Whoa.
I never use like 10% to the left, or occasionally with some background vocals or something, I'll put background vocals at 50% either side if I want them to kind of fill up some weird space.
Interesting.
But everything, you
So
know,
if you
so
have
like,
one acoustic guitar, it's going to be all the way in the left, the right, or center? Or would you
yep,
always try to have
yep.
two of something?
Well,
One piano, it's either all left.
mm-hmm.
So if you put two mics on a piano, would you put one left and
right.
one right?
Yeah, totally.
Do you use two mics on everything a lot with this technique?
Never.
You record a lot of mono stuff, electric guitar, whatever.
Almost all mono. I use stereo overheads on drums.
Right, that are left and right.
Mm-hmm. Hard left and hard right.
Interesting.
If I mic up like the toms, like the rack tom and the floor tom, I'll put the rack tom all the way to one side and the floor tom all the way to the other in correspondence with the overhead so that they really, and I'll, you know, like I just cut this record in this old church down in Terlingua, Texas. And this band came down from Santa Fe and we set up in this old church and I brought my mobile rig and my Apollo and laptop and everything in there and my mics. And my brother Jim was on drums and we had a fiddle player. We had a guy playing guitar and singing. I had those panned up the middle, had them mic'd separately, had them panned in the middle. I was actually on bass and engineering, but playing live.
Bass is up the middle.
Bass in the middle. Kick and snare. I had a top and bottom snare. Those were in the middle. Kick drum was in the middle. Overheads were hard left and right. And then I had a fiddler sitting over here, and she's all the way to the left, and a pedal steel player over here, and he's all the way to the right. We've got him kind of like jackets and stuff covering his amp just to keep bleed down because we were sitting in a circle playing live with no headphones. So everything had to be, you had to hear the vocalist or you were too loud. And so I had the fiddle all the way to the left and the pedal steel all the way to the right. But where they were sitting in correspondence to the overheads was, say, the fiddle is coming through this overhead, but she's actually panned to the other side. So we get a little, it's flipped.
So they bled into the overheads that rounded out there. That's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you think like that, you're thinking in those kinds of ways.
Right.
And there's a great use of delay right there. So say I've got like the violin in the left-hand side. Say I'm not leaning on the overhead, but I want that violin to spread. I'll put a real quick, soft, dark delay on the other side across from where the violin is. And then the pedal steel is over here on the right, and I'll put a real quick, soft delay over on the other side.
What's real quick?
Like in that kind of...
Only one repeat. It doesn't repeat more than once, right?
Right.
No feedback.
And in that kind of a situation, maybe like 30 to 80 milliseconds. Mm-hmm. Real fast, depending.
It's so hard to think in milliseconds.
Yeah.
It took me a really long time to understand at all what it might be like in real life. I don't know why it was so hard for me to think in milliseconds.
Right.
Or why I even tried. Because I should have just been listening and not trying to think in milliseconds, but I was trying to think in milliseconds. All right, how long would that be? It's a freaking millisecond.
So that's a great use of delay right there. There you go. That's a great use.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. But it seems like it would, I mean, it'd be so quick, it wouldn't even sound like a delay, really. It just makes it happen, it's creating a space.
More of an echo in the room or something.
Right.
Across the room. Yeah.
Yeah.
So use those with guitars or things, when you're panning things cross.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, even though you've panned your one instrument all the way to one side, all of a sudden it's filling up this whole spectrum across like this.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when I hang up with you, I might open that project back up and start panning stuff and adding harmonic distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sounds like fun.
It'll change your life, man. Those are life-changing things for me. I was in L.A. A couple of years ago, and I met Jim Scott, world-famous producer, engineer. He was the engineer on Tom Petty's Wildflowers record and has produced Wilco and Rolling Stones. And, I mean, look his name up. This guy is done so much.
Right.
But he came up to me at this party, and it was kind of funny, you know. We had our cocktails, and he just kind of out of the blue, he was like, "Do you know about LCR?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "Well, it's left, center, right. It's where you put everything all the way to the," and he was like, he's like got gray hair and everything, and he's fascinated by this concept. He's been using it for fucking 40 years.
Has he? Has he?
Maybe. And he's still wanting to talk about it.
Maybe he invented it. Maybe that's part of his legacy.
Yeah. Well, the Beatles were using it. And that was the thing. Back in the old days, you didn't have pan knobs that swept around. You had to put something all the way to one side, all the way in the middle, all the way to the other side.
Right.
And then by the time like Jimi Hendrix comes around, they've got one pan knob that they can take one instrument and move it around. So that's how his guitars started floating around in the mix.
Right.
But LCR was you had to use it. And so when he mentioned this to me, and I was like, well, I was like, well, don't things get kind of bunched up if you put too many things? And he was like, did you ever listen to mono? Because they put everything in one place in mono.
Right. This is three places instead of one. Right. Yeah. It's fascinating.
And he basically
and it's only three instead of infinite.
Right. And he told me, he said, if something doesn't belong in if something doesn't fit in one of those three places, it doesn't fit.
I'm learning a lot about that along the way because I try to make a lot of things fit that shouldn't be there at all.
Me too, man.
Oh my God, I'm the worst. I got it bad, man. I got it bad. Yeah. I'm learning though. It's hard knock life here. I'm learning.
What's that thing you and I used to say? Kill your children.
Wait, I don't remember that one.
I think that was you and me.
What was it?
Kill your children.
What does that mean?
Things that are very precious to you.
Oh, right.
You have to learn how to say goodbye to them.
You're gonna have to let that go, Nathan. You probably have to talk me down, like. But I love that accordion. No, you're just gonna have to say goodbye. You're gonna have to let it go.
I'll tell you what. At the end of the day, I've never regretted anything I got rid of. I've only regretted leaving things that shouldn't have stayed.
Kept. Right. Mm-hmm. There you go. That makes all the sense in the world.
So just to finish out this LCR thing, I left LA and I got back to Santa Fe, and the first thing I did was put everything to the left, everything to the right, and everything in the center. And I was blown away immediately, and every mix I've done since then has been pretty much LCR. So there was this famous producer that came into the studio working on a record, Tom Fletcher. He worked on those Toto records in the 80s and produced some Ozzy Osbourne and things like that. Anyway, he was working on this thing. And we were standing in the kitchen one day, and I sprung the question on him. I asked him if he knew about LCR.
Ah.
And he says, yeah, fuck that shit, man.
Really?
I don't want to be limited by that old antique bullshit. So there you go. There's the other side.
The other side. I love it. I love it. But had he heard of it?
Yes.
He had.
He's like, fuck that. That's the way the Beatles did. I fucking hate that shit.
He probably hates that dude you met in L.A.
It probably hates him.
They have a whole personal beef. Good story.
Well, good to see you, Nathan.
Great to see you.
Guess I ought to go put my head down.
You're a natural at this. Will you do it again sometime?
Let's do it. You let me know, man. Shoot me a text and say I need you on my show. And
Yeah, we're doing a lot of mixing in real time and stuff. It's a good springboard for us to start our conversation with is a actual mix question.
I'll hop in. Tonight was the first time that I hopped in. I'll hop in and get involved. And
awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, sweet. Love you, man.
Love you too. Take care, everybody.
Good night. Bill Palmer, ladies and gentlemen.